There are specialty roasters as such who really take control of all the processes from receiving the bags of coffee to the bag of coffee going to the customer. So it's completely different to a commodity roaster, for example. So
You're aware that you don't have internet, right?
No. I wasn't aware of that at all, but I can show you on my phone.
No puede manejar la mano.
No, es que no hay internet aquí.
Ah, sí, pues.
Pero puedes tener un super café que si calas la rosteada te
Pero si tienes un super café y lo
So
rocias bien.
the traditional roasting style in Guatemala is turn on the roaster, put the gas on full blast, and put the coffee in. And however long it takes to turn brown, that's the roast done and to take it out. So really there's no consistency, there's no focus on flavor. You could have the worst coffee in the world and you'd still roast it in the same manner as such. So when I went around and saw the roasters around Guatemala, they were all roasting in the exact same style. Full gas, no airflow, and really there was no consistency, there was no standards. And this is far removed from what I'm used to as such. So I got my own roaster built. I designed my own roaster. It is a very specific type of drum for better heat conduction. It's really high powered, so there's really high powered gas. But the big thing about it is it has lots of air, right? So if you have a flame and you apply air, you have a larger flame. But the Guatemalans were just turning on the flame, using no air, and they were wasting lots of gas trying to get their coffee up to brown. But I use medium amount of gas, use lots of air, and my drum rotates very fast. So a combination of these three, I have lots of movement, lots of convection, but the air is used as an energy in itself, so it roasts the coffee quicker.
¿De dónde viene el aire? ¿No es una bomba de aire? ¿Qué haces con el aire? Where does the air come from?
It comes, we draw it in with a fan.
Ah, con un
Yeah,
fan.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
What kind of fan?
it's a normal fan, but not like a cooling fan, but it's a fan attached to the roaster, but it draws in air, and that air then goes out, so it takes away the dust and the smoke and the smoky air. So the combination of these three, the speed of the drum, the more air and better gas burner as such, allows for quite a different type of roast. When you use more convection than conduction, you get a cleaner cup of coffee and there's a bit more sweetness to it. But when you use a slow drum with loads of gas, effectively you burn away all the flavour and you're just left with a kind of a muted, monotone coffee. But I want to show you something that's interesting. So I use software. So I use software to roast, and this is super technical, it's very detailed, but it will give you really good view of what's going on in a roast. So the blue and the orange are two different coffees, okay? So you can see that they both end up at a different point.
There are two different coffees.
It's the same coffee,
being-
it's the same coffee, two different roasts.
Procedures, right?
Yeah, one of those is this coffee.
This coffee?
Yeah. So we get to see exactly what's going on in a roast. So that's the bean temperature. Now, if you put your meat in the oven and you bake a joint of meat, it does the exact same thing. It starts off high, goes down low, and then you bring it up to like 200 degrees or 180 degrees. So it's effectively the same function. But in coffee roasting, we reduce the gas. So because there's releases of energy throughout the roast, I reduce the gas gradually throughout the roast. So you can see there are two fairly different roasts, right? But the big thing about this is something I'm not showing you. So I look at this, it's kind of not important. The main important thing is the speed, right? So now I'm introducing another little line. So this is the speed of the roast, the velocity. So at the start, if you see the
Speed of
curve,
the
it's
road
down.
or the speed of
And
the
the intersection is the point
speed of the
you want.
roast.
Intersection is nothing. No,
Okay.
I view that these are two completely different things. So this is the speed, and at the start of the roast, you want a lot of speed, and not rotational speed, but the
Same amount of time, more
Not
A lot of drying speed.
It's the speed of the roast. It's the speed of the bean temperature. So at the start, the bean temperature is going to rise quickly, and at the end, it's going to rise a little slower, right? But that really has the biggest impact on flavor.
Would you consider that to be like searing your meat?
Um,
When you sear your meat to conserve everything inside?
It kind of
bread?
is the exact same. I use the same principles for cooking food to coffee roasting and
Alright.
such. But if you want to cook the center, if you have a grain of coffee that's really dense and you want to cook the center of it, you need a lot of energy to get
Exactly.
to penetrate the bean and get into the center of the bean. If you don't have enough energy, the inside of the bean is going to be raw, like you're searing a steak. Such.
Convection oven or a microwave?
Órale, pues pégalo. Al microondas
So the
y
speed-
calienta el centro.
El centro.
The speed has the biggest impact on flavor, right? Now, what we want in the speed is the speed to be always reducing. And if there's one increase in speed throughout the roast, it breaks a chain reaction in the bean. So if, for example, in the middle of the roast, the bean temperature rises rapidly and the speed picks up, I've effectively broken all my hard work in the first 5 minutes and the chain reaction is broken. So if you have one little kink in that velocity graph, you're going to notice an impact in flavor. If you have a really big peak in the velocity of the roast, speed of the roast, you're going to lose flavor, clarity, acidity, and the finish. So if you gave me a cup of coffee now, I could probably tell you that this roast peaked and that the velocity didn't continuously go down as such. So
And you can tell that from the cup.
I can tell it from the cup.
You can that?
Yeah, for instance, this one didn't pick.
This did. Now, I have that coffee here, right? And I'll show you exactly what it is. It's not the most perfect roast in the world. I can improve it, but it did peak a little. so
Your father-in-law.
So-
you better watch out.
I would do a test roast. I would do a test roast and then modify it a little and then modify it again until I get it to a region where I'm happy with it and there's a long-lasting finish and there's sweetness and
You
just
can
carrying it.
control that in your roast?
Yeah, by controlling the gas. So I'm constantly reducing the gas. Towards the end of the roast, the speed is always going down, or the velocity is always slowing. So I'll show you.
Esas son las cucharas que sirven para cada
Sí. O sea, entra la misma taza. Del mismo grano.
Lo debiera llevar hasta.
No, se tiene que quedar aquí para
So one little movement in the velocity, like something, a dip or a peak, will change the flavor very quickly. So the bean. Okay.
La tostada es lo que es
Eso es lo.
el
Es
sí.
primero todo el trabajo el trabajo
So
del patio.
this is the same coffee. There's
Se
slight
hace.
differences in them. See that little peak at the end?
Pero si
Yeah,
en el que tú te
Here,
ves en todo este
small little.
proceso y luego
It's like
viene
15 seconds of
tostado
your
y te
life,
lo pagan.
but it will change the coffee from
Te lo quemas.
actually sweet and flavorful and acidic to dead, having no finish, no alcohol.
Desde
So
que está
that's-
secado.
Effectively what I control, but it's completely different. The look of the bean is completely different to what you would normally find here. It's much lighter because we're applying less energy to the bean.
Por eso
Effectively,
era
it's
que
approached the same.
tu papá no
It's fully
quería que te
developed in the
metieras
inside
en
and the
café.
outside.
Era
But
demasiado el rollo.
yeah, minor little changes in the velocity of the roast will really impact the
And how
flavor.
did you end up knowing all this? Like studying coffee, pero
When I was working in coffee, I really didn't want to focus on roasting because there was so much to learn on that side. And when I started roasting, I knew enough about roasting. I knew about cell formation and stuff like that for roasting to practice.
Natalia,
And then I
dejas-
practiced. But when you get like 2,000 roasts in under your belt, you understand what's going on a bit more. So, yeah, but
es pura práctica, pues.
it's
Research and development.
Los softwares y todo, o sea, how come like a producer country like Guatemala does not have one single roaster that knows all these things
Do you know why?
could change the quality of the Guatemalan coffee.
Do you know why?
What?
Because you don't appreciate coffee enough. You don't pay enough for coffee. People,
The customers here locally.
people, general people and people that
Guatemalan
go to
people.
cafes, yeah. I think the price of coffee here is too low. You need to spend more money, there needs to be better profits for smaller roasters because they can't afford to buy decent equipment, decent roasters, technology. This is $90 a month, this software. But to clear that and to have a living, people have to start paying more per cup in a cafe first and foremost, and then pretty much more.
The consumer culture here is not.
It's a cultural thing, we're used
Uh-huh.
to, we're used to good coffee at a lower price.
For a cup of coffee.
You pay 20 to $25
Ustedes
a
venden su
and
café.
here we pay 10
qué?
quetzales, is acceptable.
¿En qué proceso?
Like, I know you're producing
¿Hasta dónde
coffee, but
llega?
if you want to
Pergamino.
coffee,
Antes de
you start investing in it.
Pergamino,
That's
¿ah?
oro.
Oro.
Ah, oro,
In
oro.
Ireland we pay $2.
Esto es pergamino.
In market roasters do very well in Ireland. So really high reputation.
Lo de adentro.
Really good coffee.